Astrocast. I'm your host, Rue. Today is Wednesday, October 22nd, 2025. It's New Moon Week, y'all. Every astronomer's favorite time of the 28-day lunar cycle. I guess technically we're at a slightly waxing crescent moon. Hope everybody's been well. I know I have been a very, very busy boy. What else is new though, right? Let me see if we can get this music to gently fade away. So what have you guys been up to? I've been both lucky and not so lucky in my clear skies as of late. So I've been working on a project. I think I hinted at it last week on the show. I told everybody how I obviously joined the 2600 Club, which I'm very, very happy to be a member of, card-carrying member now. And I have been working on a pretty big project of the Pleiades. So the Pleiades has obviously always been one of my favorite asterisms or clusters, whatever you want to call it. I believe it's an asterism technically, I think. I don't know. I could be wrong about that. But it's a very, very beautiful part of our night sky. And I always just love it this time of year when it comes around because you know what comes right after the Pleiades. If you just wait a few hours, undoubtedly Orion will follow shortly behind. So always had it in my head with Orion that it would be fun to do a really, long project that was very drawn out. But then when I talked about IFN earlier this year on the show, and I had mentioned at one point that I was able to get a lot of the IFN dust that is surrounding the Pleiades in a past project. But, the quality of the overall image still left something to be desired, because while I was able to pull out a ton of that dust, it was still a little bit of a noisy image. And even with the great tools that we have at our disposal these days, if you're like me and you stretch stuff to its limits, if you don't have enough actual data, at some point that weakness is still going to show. So to that end, I said, what would be a good number for M45? And I don't know why, but it just occurred to me that the correct number of hours, it's right there in the name. It was just sitting there waiting on me. And for whatever reason, I decided that 45 hours would be the right number for me. I think a lot of the credit probably belongs with Justin. He is almost like a folk hero for the show at this point. I will add, by the way, I sent this photo to all of our Patreon Discord members, which we'll get to later. But he actually did send in a copy of one of his photos. So if you listen to the episode a couple months ago where Justin joined us and you heard me just, gobsmacked about the quality of his images because of the time that he put into them, he did send me a copy of one. So if you'd like to see that image, please feel free to jump over to the Astrocast Facebook page. I'll put a link in the show notes for it. And by all means, please pop over there and have a look at it. But, I thought 45 hours on M45 would be just a really, really good way to go. I think in the past, from my home location, I've gotten about 10 hours of data. And, 10 hours is enough to bring out that dust in the area that is surrounding the Pleiades. But with the 2600, with the much higher pixel count, and I'm putting it through my Petzval telescope, which is, the Astrograph, the SQA55. It frames up really well. The Pleiades isn't quite as zoomed in, but again, that's not what I'm going for. I'm okay with having a wider field of view on this one because I really want to capture all of that beautiful IFN dust that is surrounding it. So To that end, I was able to successfully gather so far more than 30 hours of data on the Pleiades. So I think I've gotten 5 nights in total, if I'm not mistaken. I'm doing 3-minute subs. I have predominantly been doing it with the new light pollution filter, which of course is the Leviathan Spectral Pro, which I have on long-term loan from Leviathan. And James actually from Leviathan, James, he listened to the show last week and he thought, wow, that sounds like a really cool project. And he messaged me and said that he would also recommend incorporating some data without the filter to maybe make that dust pop even a little bit more. So I think what I'm going to do now that I've got, more than 30 hours of data with the filter is I might try to go for like, I don't know, 5 to 10 hours of data of just like regular 60-second subs, I'm thinking, with a regular UV-IR cut filter. I don't know. I'm going to have to play around with it and see what kind of exposure I can get versus the light pollution here without, blowing the whole image out. You have to be careful, whenever you're mixing different increments of time. You can absolutely take, a stack of data with 3-minute subs and then incorporate a stack of data with 60-second subs into it. But you just want to be careful that you're, matching things like, the temperature and various other settings. You want to make sure your flats are properly incorporated and stacked correctly before you stack ultimately those 2 sets of data together to hopefully bring out the best of both worlds. So I've had a lot of success with that. The only thing that I'm a little bit disappointed about is that I haven't been able to see either of the comets yet. So I am, just a huge fan of hunting comets. And if you guys know, last year, when the comet came around, I did everything in my power to see them, but the clouds just have not worked in my cooperation. So, the early mornings and the early evenings are the times to see these particular comets, Lemon and Swan, and they just haven't cooperated with me. And what a shame. The 20th came and went, and I was not able to see it because that was the date, if you remember from last week's episode, where it was going to line up perfectly in the constellation of Scutum. And I really, really wanted to get that shot, but that's astronomy. Sometimes you get them and sometimes you don't. But we will live to see another day and we'll try for another comet, and they're all beautiful. So if you have managed to take a shot yourself, I would love to see it. Please feel free to, tag me on any social media. If you just hashtag the Astrocast, I search that every week. Of course, feel free to email me or drop it on the Facebook page, whatever you like, but I would love to see your photos. Speaking of email, kind of a cool announcement. I recently purchased a new domain. So you are listening to the proud owner of theastrocast.com. So that's something I've wanted to do for a long time, and I wasn't able to do it because astrocast.com is taken. And I know that there's like Web 2 domains that you can get, but I wasn't really particularly interested in any of those. And I don't know why it never occurred to me to search for theastrocast.com. But lo and behold, that was available. So I did purchase the domain. Currently, it's just redirecting to qcru.com. I do have plans to build that out into its own Astrocast-centric website. So stay tuned for that. But since I own the domain now, I own the email addresses that go with it. So from now on, if you have any comments, questions, anything at all about the show, feel free to email me. You can do that at rue@theastrocast.com. So happy to say that. I love my rueastrocast@gmail.com, but rue@theastrocast.com, it just sounds so much better. So in other astronomy news, last year, I read an article about something that I'm sure many of you have probably seen or thought about. I'm sure it's crossed your mind at one point or another. as all of these satellites continue to be launched at the pace that they're being launched. And, commercial space travel becomes cheaper and more economical every day. More companies are able to launch more things into space, which ultimately means more business is going to be taking place in low Earth orbit. So what I saw when I was reading last year, and I say last year, it was actually in March of this year, so about 6-7 months ago, was just an article that was written about a private company in Russia that wants to put large advertisements into low Earth orbit. And they're trying to use basically like satellites and lasers to have constellations fly by that would show like brand names in the night sky. And that to me is disgusting on so many levels. And indeed, we have a lot of astronomers were raising alarm about how bad this would be. And there were, many delegates from various nations that were trying to exclude Russia and basically ban space ads, and, saying that this could basically ruin ground-based astronomy. So, I mean, I don't even need to tell you, if you put advertisements in space, that's kind of the whole ball game, right? But this was kind of, they're kicking around the idea, right? But it's not something that is fully launched. We're not seeing Pepsi float by Orion anytime soon. But last week, I was doing my normal perusing of the news, as I do. And the algorithm knows me well. So it knows anytime that there's anything related to space, I generally want to see it. And the article that I read last week was even more disturbing than advertisements in space. So if you think advertisements in space are bad, wait until you hear this. So there is a company that is based out of the United States in Los Angeles County, to be specific, and it is called Reflect Orbital. And they're an aerospace company that would like to launch satellites into low Earth orbit that would essentially have mirrors on them that would allow sunlight to be beamed down to Earth, even in the dead of night. Now, there are so many reasons why this is wrong. I don't even know where to start. There's good news and bad news for this. I guess the first place that I will start is the company. So like I said, it's called Reflect Orbital. And if any of you would like to, you can go to reflectorbital.com/contact and send them a message. Don't send anything violent or threatening or nasty. That is not how we want our community to come off as. However, we would like to communicate to them how important it is that we protect our dark skies. And while I appreciate the idea that they are trying to get at, which is ultimately they want to provide power to solar farms when it's not possible in the middle of the night, we are not using solar to its full potential, not even close, in the middle of the day yet. So to launch satellites into low Earth orbit that could potentially be beaming down literal sunlight in the middle of the night while satellites fly over your head so someone's solar farm can get charged up at 1/12 the rate of what it would during the daytime, it really just boggles the mind to me. And it almost feels like this is like a proof of concept, or they're, trying to see if they can throw everything at the wall to get investors because it's such a crazy idea that they can probably get people to throw money at them. I don't know. Because again, I feel like we have not even come close to utilizing what we could potentially utilize solar for. And wireless power has not been explored far enough. Hell, space elevators still have a long ways to go, but I think that is a distinct possibility in our future. And if we could do that, we could capture sunlight from space and then literally cable it down to Earth if we wanted to, right? But to put proof of concepts into our night sky in the year 2025, when we already are launching thousands of satellites every year and have gone from 7,000 satellites in the year 2000 to more than 15,000 satellites as of today, with the plan for there to be 50,000 to 100,000 in the next decade, God knows we're probably going to have Pepsi flying by in the night sky before too much longer. The last thing we need is for birds' circadian rhythms, humans' circadian rhythms, ground-based astronomy, and everything else being disrupted, even if it's only for a small portion of the night. That is how it starts, right? And that's not where it ends. And God forbid this company somehow pulled it off and they were able to successfully beam this energy down. That would be so bad for astronomy that I don't know where to begin. It honestly, I'm not trying to be like a fear monger, but stuff like that terrifies me. And it leaves you in a place where, I don't know. I think to myself, like, we'll be in a world one day where only the richest of the rich will be able to afford dark skies. And I mean, let's be honest, we're already kind of on our way there, because if you're a poor kid who lives in the inner city, chances are you are not getting out to the country to view the Milky Way anytime soon, right? So, I mean, take that out to its natural conclusion and then start beaming down light from the sky in the middle of the night. Where does that leave us? Where are we as a society if we don't even have starlight anymore? So I really do. I encourage everyone to send them an email and think about it. Like I say, don't be nasty about it. That won't help anything. But I'm genuinely distraught over the thought of sunlight being beamed down at 2:00 in the morning while, people are trying to sleep, or we're trying to, capture photos of M45 or capture photos of comets. Imagine for a moment if you scheduled a trip to the southern hemisphere a year in advance and you went to the Atacama Desert and, trip of a lifetime. And then you get down there only to find out that a constellation of, I don't know what they call these things, sunbeamers, is flying over you all night long. I mean, what a nightmare. And what's crazy is they're actually they're poised to make this happen. So they have their test craft called the Earendel 1 slated to launch next year. Okay? And if the test goes well, they are planning to launch thousands more with a constellation of more than 4,000 satellites, each of which would carry a 180-foot mirror designed to focus sunlight on the Earth. You're at that scale, you're talking about a patch of sunlight more than 4 miles across and way brighter than the full moon. Still dimmer than a midday sun, obviously, but way brighter than the full moon. 4,000 of them. It's not often that I'm like dumbfounded while I'm giving you guys news on things, but I saw this last week, and I'm reading the article, and there's like a lot of hurdles that they still have to get over, not the least of which is cost, because obviously it's not cheap to get satellites into space still. I mean, it's a lot more affordable than it used to be. Yeah, absolutely. But those mirrors are only able to generate about 20% of what regular sunlight can generate. Okay. And obviously they can't generate it through the clouds. So if it's cloudy out, you still can't do anything with that. So I hope and pray that this fails. And when I say fails, I mean fails flat on its ass. Excuse my language, but it's just a terrible idea. They say that rural towns and open fields would get brief, startling bursts of extra light, and just imagine that, you're sitting out in your dark sky site, enjoying a beautiful evening. It's new moon. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a constellation, 5 times the size of Starlink comes overhead with 4-mile wide patches of sunlight beaming down on you. Just the thought of it literally makes me crazy. The founder actually has floated the idea of having a 250,000 satellite constellation. 250,000. So yeah, I don't know why he doesn't just build a Dyson sphere at that point. Like, why would you want to put 250,000 satellites around our planet? I don't know. That's beyond me. But yeah, that's what they're planning to do. It's not great, guys. And I hate to say it, but like, there's not a lot of hurdles for them to cross other than getting investors. I mean, heck, look at SpaceX. I mean, if you've got deep pockets, you can do whatever you want in this world. Nothing's going to stop you from doing it. Certainly not a conglomerate of scientists coming together and saying, please don't do this. You can destroy the circadian rhythms of some of our most important animals. They don't care. They want to make more money, So, write them a letter. I know I'm certainly going to. I need to temper myself a little bit. Forgive me if I'm passionate. I'm passionate about light pollution. You guys know this. Like, that is something that is near and dear to my heart. You rarely will see a piece of merch that I sell that doesn't have something to say about light pollution on it. And I know that it's not much, but that's, one little thing that I can do, where I know if someone in Europe buys an Astrocast shirt or a bumper sticker, at least maybe one other stranger that I don't know in Europe sees that and says, light pollution, what's that? And then goes and looks it up. Right. So that's kind of like, it's the calling card, or the hill to die on for this show is light pollution. And this might be the worst offender that I have ever seen. Thankfully, it's still conceptual as of this moment. But like I say, 2026 is less than 3 months away now, and they are planning to launch. 180-foot mirrors, 4,000 satellites. They already have investors. I don't know what stops these sort of things from happening. I guess maybe you could pass laws, but then they could just go to another country and get investors there. I mean, and honestly, let's be real. Like in this day and age, like, nah, you don't need to go to other countries. You can do it right here. It's not like this is a beacon for the scientific community anymore here in the good old US of A. Not to get political, but yeah, I don't know, man. It really does worry me, and it should worry you too. If it doesn't, well, if you're listening to this show, I'm sure it does. So please look into it. Please write them a letter. If you guys have any other ideas for things that we could do that would be productive, let me know. I have a hard time getting my head around how to convince these people to just not do it, because obviously they've probably put a whole lot of work and effort into building this company. And you can't just tell someone, hey, shut down your company. Like, they'll just laugh at you, right? But like when your whole company is based on the premise of doing something that can completely destroy one of the most beautiful things that we can do on this planet, not to mention the circadian rhythms of birds, insects, and countless other animals, I don't know how you can sleep at night if you are the founder of that company and you know these things. And I have a hard time believing, if you've gotten this far, that you're unaware. So if you guys have any ideas for what we could do to help prevent this from happening, please let me know. Shoot me an email at rue@theastrocast.com. And I would certainly love to have that discussion. Real quick, to get on a different topic for a moment, I want to say hello and welcome some new members to our Patreon and Discord family. I want to say hello to Lex, Ken, and Chris. We do have yet another Chris that has joined the group. There are quite a few Chris's. That's okay. I'm a Chris too. I go by Rue, obviously, as you guys know, but I grew up, and my two best friends growing up, like in middle school and high school, they were both named Chris as well. So we all had our own nicknames, and Rue was always mine. So welcome to the group, Chris, Ken, and Lex. Very, very super happy to have you guys. You're all very interesting people. I love your rigs. We've got another person, and forgive me, I think it was Chris who said that he builds his own rigs. Sorry if I got that wrong. I might have that wrong. I'll have to look and see. But we've got another basically machine shop guy that has built his own mounts, which is super cool to see. A lot of people in the Discord actually are building their own mounts, which is really, really awesome. We actually have a mount dedicated to the Astrocast, the AC5. So shout out there. But if you would like to join the group and help support the show and keep it ad free, which is the way we like to be, you can do that by going to patreon.com/the Astrocast. Every dollar helps, and I greatly appreciate everybody supporting the show. Also, want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Dark Dragons Astronomy. We haven't talked about Dark Dragons in a few weeks, but I want to bring them up just to mention, if you are building an observatory and you need solutions for your roll-off roof, including automations and being able to connect from a remote location, no matter what the situation is with your hardware, those are the guys to talk to. So if you ever need any assistance with your observatory needs, please look up Dark Dragons Astronomy. Awesome guys, friends of the show, friends at the Charlotte Amateur Astronomers Club. I just renewed my membership there. Proud card-carrying member of the Charlotte Astronomical community for years and years, and certainly hope to be one for many more years to come. And I'll obviously link to Dark Dragons in the show notes as well. Man, that got me a little bit worked up. That might have been the most fire you guys have heard in my voice yet. I can't say for sure, but it does get me worked up when I talk about that stuff because, man, oh man, we need to protect what we have left of our dark skies because, man, there's not a lot of them left. 90% of the world lives in, Bortle 6 or higher. So, if you're like me, you're already dealing with light pollution on a daily basis. So the last thing you want is for sunlight to start getting beamed down in your house every night like that. That just sounds like a total dystopian nightmare. I think that term is thrown around a lot. Dystopian nightmare. Everybody says it about everything nowadays. But that is really pushing the envelope on it, I gotta say. So let's hope and pray that whole situation just falls apart and it's not cost effective at all. Hopefully someone comes out and says, hey, it would make more sense if you just built a solar farm twice as big on the ground. Maybe that's the answer, maybe just use more of the daylight sun that we already have instead of trying to beam it down at night. It doesn't make sense to me either. Like, does that make sense to you guys? Like going through all that effort of launching, I know you can make mirrors out of, more lightweight materials than, glass like we do typically. Obviously 180-foot mirror. I'm assuming they're not launching a fragile James Webb type mirror into space. They're going to use some type of reflective material while they're up there. But there's no way that that's going to be cost efficient, right? Right. I mean, I guess they've ran the numbers on it and they figured out a way to make it work. But man, oh man, 4,000 of those. That's a freaking nightmare. I mean, and the guy talking about 250,000 of them. That's, ooh, buddy, the audacity. All right. So let's talk about something a little bit more happy and useful. So something that I get asked about quite frequently, and even if I'm not asked about it, it pops up quite a bit whenever I am looking in forums or Facebook or what have you, is flats. And I know early on we did an episode called All About Calibration Frames, and I think it's a pretty darn good episode. But I think I was probably focused a bit more on my 294 MC Pro at the time. And that particular camera has some kind of weird quirks to it that require you to take longer exposures than you generally otherwise would need to with most newer astronomy cameras. And because of that, I don't know how much that knowledge applied to, the average person who had something like a 585 MC Pro or a 2600 MC Pro like I have now. So first, let's talk about what flats are for. So flats are a type of calibration frame, okay? And they are used specifically to take care of vignetting and dust motes. And they can also take care of some pixel issues, like if you have hot pixels, for example. But your dark frames also work with those. It's when you don't use flats, though, you can run into some real issues with like patchiness, or you might have a big dust mote on your images. Or if you're doing a multi-night session like I'm currently doing with M45, you can run into some real problems, because if you get dust in one spot on night 1 and then dust in another spot on night 3, and you don't account for that by taking flats each night, well, you might end up with 45 hours of data that's not really useful. So the good news is flats are super easy to take. Once you actually learn how to do it and practice doing it, it's pretty darn simple. So I want to tell you a few different ways that you can take flats, and we'll do, all the way from free to what I do, which is I guess you wouldn't say free, but it's very cheap, up to a more high end method that you can do to automate things more. So what you want to do when you're taking a flat is you want to get a short exposure that fills your ADU, which is your histogram essentially at the bottom. If you're in ASI air and you see your histogram at the bottom, it'll give you a number. And basically what you're aiming for is between about 25 and 35K. I usually try to aim for about 30K whenever I am taking my flats. And it kind of depends on your camera, but most 16-bit cameras, you're going to aim between 25 and 35K ADU. On the actual scale, again, that's anywhere from 35 to 50%. So if you were to take a photo of an evenly lit white surface and you noticed that your histogram was pushed all the way to the right of that scale, you knew, or you would know, that you've overdone it. And if it's all the way to the left, you haven't done enough. So you want to get it right in the middle. And essentially that is going to be how you determine how long your exposure should be. Now, the good news is most modern tools like Nina and ASI Air will automatically calculate how long the flat needs to be based on how bright the white light that you're looking at is. And indeed, you don't even necessarily need to have a separate white light. A lot of people will take what are called sky flats. So if you're in twilight, where it's, just before the sun rises or sun goes down for that matter, or just after the sun goes down, sorry, or just before the sun rises, but you still have, that little bit of light left in the sky, that is a perfect time to take sky flats. So you would aim your telescope directly up at the zenith, so overhead, because that's where you're going to have a nice evenly lit sky is what you're aiming for. And I will say, with this method, you do need to be quick about it. You don't want to, take 5 flats and then wait 5 minutes and take 10 more. That's the last thing you'd want to do, because the sky's lighting conditions are going to change greatly over 10 minutes. So if you're doing it this way, you just need to make sure that you take all of your flats in one group. Also, I will say, if I was doing something like taking flats for a 294, where I know they need to be, 2 to 3 seconds each, and I want to take 30 to 50 flats, I'm probably not going to do sky flats, because I know that that's probably going to take 3 minutes or so just to take all the flats. And because of that, there's no way that those sky conditions aren't going to change over those 3 minutes. So sky flats probably aren't the ideal way to take your flats, but they are a way that you can take them. So basically, dawn to dusk, just before sunrise, or just after sunset, when you still got a little bit of light in the sky, 2 to 3 degrees below the horizon with the sun, is what you'd be aiming for. And like I say, you want to take at least 20 flats when you're taking them. I know some people take 30. I've heard of people taking 50. I think 50 is probably overkill. Me personally, I'll generally take between 20 and 30 flats, depending on the project. If I do like a really big project, I'll usually take more, just because I feel like more is better. But going over 30, probably overkill. So now, outside of those sky flats, the other methods that we have are what is called the t-shirt method. So this is the one that you've probably seen on YouTube once or twice if you've watched enough channels. But essentially what you can do is get a white t-shirt, or any white piece of cloth. In fact, I've gotten white cloth that I got from Michael's, a yard of it, and fold it over on itself once or twice. And, again, depending on your camera, it might need to be 3 or 4 times. Like with my 294, I had to stack up that cloth pretty thick for it to be able to take a 3-second exposure to fill up that ADU to 50%. But, for most cameras, 2/10 to 3/10 of a second should get you in that 25 to 35K range of the ADU. So put that t-shirt over the objective lens, and then you want to put a very low brightness but evenly lit light source on top of the t-shirt. So the obvious one that most people have would be like a tablet. If you've got an iPad, you could put an iPad over it if it's turned all the way down on the brightness. You obviously would want to have like a white image on the screen at the time. You can just go to images.google.com and search white background and then tap on one of those, turn the brightness down, put it on top of the t-shirt. And Robert's your brother's mother. After you do that, you should be good to go. Now, the other method is to actually get a flat panel or a diffuser. And this kind of combines everything into one easy to use light source. So essentially it's got the, translucent but very opaque white plastic on it, and then a dimmable white light behind it. Now, the easiest way that you can get one of these is to go on Amazon and just look for I believe they call them tracing panels. And these are dimmable panels that'll allow you to adjust the brightness up or down. And they've actually gotten a lot better in recent years. When I bought one back in 2022, they weren't the best. You had to plug them in with a USB and they weren't super adjustable. Now they're fully wireless, so they're rechargeable with Type-C, and they dim down very, very dim. So you can get one of those for like $20 online. To me, that's the sweet spot, because I don't want to, stretch a t-shirt over my telescope and put my iPad on top of it. I actually broke an iPad once doing just that on my 80 millimeter doublet telescope. It actually slipped right off the top. If you are using a tablet, this is probably a good time to mention, be very careful. You got to be real careful because obviously you want to hold the tablet in place so it doesn't slip, but you don't want to, shake it around and move it so the flats are, getting messed up. But the tracing panel works really, really well. And like I say, you can get one of those for $20. I'll link one like I have in the show notes if you want to pick one up. I think, that's probably the most cost effective way to take your flats. And it only takes 2 minutes to do it with like an ASI Air or Nina if you use their Flat Wizard when you're done. And what I usually do is I will do them at the beginning of the night. And then if I think about it, I'll do them at the end of the night as well. So I have 2 sets of flats. Sometimes things go wrong and something might happen. Now, usually I'll start with the ones that I take at the end of the night because, if dust lands on the telescope throughout the night, obviously the flats that I took at the end of the night are going to work best to counteract those dust motes. A couple of other things to know about taking flats is that when you take them, you need to keep all of your settings except for the exposure time the exact same. So, you want to keep your gain the same. You want to keep the temperature the same. Really important that you keep the framing the same. If you rotate your telescope, as in the camera for framing, then you need to take new flats, because once you rotate that camera so you can frame something up differently, any dust spots that are on your objective lens of your telescope are now in a new area when you're looking at the photo. So anytime that, that camera gets rotated, you need to take new flats. So just keep that in mind whenever you're doing it. Now, the last type of flats device that you can take, which is not super cost effective, but it is super automated, would be like an automatic flip flap or flat cap, whatever you want to call it. I think flip flap's probably the funnest thing to call it. But there are various companies that basically make caps that fit the specific size telescope that you have. And some of them, in fact, are adjustable. And if you can find one that's adjustable, I would highly recommend that and buy one that fits the largest aperture of telescope that you have, and then just adjust it down to the smallest one as needed. I I know Deep Sky Dad makes a nice quality one. Parrish, friend of the show, actually purchased his through Deep Sky Dad, and I believe he said good things about it. They are not cheap, but if you're in a situation where you are shooting remotely, they can be completely invaluable. If you're not wanting to do sky flats like we talked about earlier, having access to a remote flat cap can make all the difference. So basically, this is like a motorized cap that you put on the end of your telescope. That if you can picture like I don't know, an open mason jar that opens and closes and has a hinge, kind of picture like a hinged lid coming up and down, and you get the idea. But in that lid, there are evenly lit LED lights that can also turn on remotely. So at the end of your session or whenever you want, you can press a button in your remote software to turn that flat cap on and have it cover your objective lens and then evenly light the surface. So then you can take your flats as you normally would with a tracing pad or the sky or a t-shirt or whatever you would normally use. Now the downside here obviously is cost. They are not cheap. I actually looked into, just as a exercise, I said, maybe I could make my own. So I started looking into the parts that I would need using like an Arduino and servos and what have you. And I pretty quickly got to well over $100 for just the parts. And while that still is, obviously more affordable than buying a $300 one from like Deep Sky Dad, still not cheap. So for now, I'm going to keep using just the basic tracing pad because it works fine for my purposes. But, I might change that in the future. I'm also planning on in the spring, I'm wanting to take a trip out to Texas with Parrish. He is actually wanting to set up a second remote rig down at Starfront Observatory, and I'm wanting to put my first remote rig up. So me and him are planning on making that trip together in the springtime. And, at that point, depending on, I don't know, I'll have to look and see. I hear a lot of people do sky flats there, just remotely taking them of the sky at, 5:30 in the morning or what have you. But I'll look and see what people are doing and ask around, maybe get on their forum and see what people say. But I might end up purchasing one of those in the future. So if and when I do, I'll certainly let you know how that goes. All right. So this is going to be a little bit of a briefer than normal episode this week. Not by much, but just about 10 minutes, just because I have to mow the lawn and somehow I have to cram recording and mowing the lawn into one afternoon. I'm able to do that because, of course, I am Super Husband Brew. But I will not leave you without making a recommendation. I did recommend Project Hail Mary to many of you, well, to all of you last week who listened to the show. And I got some great feedback on that. A lot of you guys started reading it and you're getting it. I'm glad you're getting it because, man, it's such a great novel. It really is. Like I say, the movie comes out in March. It looks like I'm praying that it's going to be great because it looks so highly adaptable to me. It just looks like it would make a great screenplay. So we will see. Time will tell. Hopefully they're able to adapt it good. I hope they do justice to Rocky because he's such a great character. But time will tell and we will see. But I wanted to recommend to you, I was trying to think of another really fun read that I enjoyed. And it got me thinking back to some of the stuff that I read last year and the year prior to that. And my sister had actually recommended a particular novel to me after she had listened to it. And I ended up getting super hooked on this particular series. And it's like tailor made for a specific type of individual like me. It's definitely a geeky book. And it's for, if you love like RPGs and nerdiness and hackers and computers and all these sorts of things, then it'll probably be up your alley. But the first book, it's a series called Magic 2.0, but it's called Off to Be the Wizard by an author by the name of Scott Meyer. It's a 6-book science fiction fantasy series that he wrote. And it's basically a story about a computer geek who discovers that reality is actually a computer program, and he is able to reprogram his attributes in the program in real time. So I won't spoil anything else beyond that, but needless to say, it's a really, really, really good story. As usual, I highly recommend the audiobook. If you go to Audible, you can check that out. It's a really, really great one. And the good news is, like I say, there's 6 of them. So if you really like the first one, there is a whole lot more where that came from. So it's just a great story. It's super fun. If you're looking for something not too heavy, easy to listen to, you don't have to, rack your brain too hard while you're listening to it. Definitely can recommend Off to Be the Wizard. So that is going to do it for this week, guys. I thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you are getting plenty of clear skies on this new moon week. I know that tonight is supposed to be clear for me, as is tomorrow night and the night after. So I'm really hoping I'll be able to get those last 15 hours of the Pleiades and share that image with you guys next week when we talk. You can always go to facebook.com if you want to check out the latest there. I try to post there pretty regularly. And of course, if you want to keep up with me and the rest of the family, go to patreon.com/the Astrocast. If you want to support the show in any other way, I will have the link to all of our various affiliate programs in the show note. Any purchase that you make through those greatly helps keep the show ad-free and just helps with server cost and everything that goes into the production of the show every week. So that is going to do it for this week's episode of the Astrocast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Drew, and as always, clear skies.